You do for you sell your soul for a free can of High Vita?
Yeah, for real. Shit better be good.
Oh, it's probably not.
Dude, so I was talking to I was talking to the guy I work with, and he was like, hydrogen infused water? There's already hydrogen in water. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. Just
Just go with it, man. It's
yeah, I was like, dude, come on, we got like 40 listeners.
Hey man, if we can get like two listeners out in like Michigan or California,
That'd
it's a
be
win.
great.
That's a win for us.
That,
All right, whenever you're ready.
okay. So there's a whole team who's in need of Hivita. That would be Northwestern. So Northwestern had made the tournament in their history. They get in, and they take care of business in the first round and get a win. So they're already playing with house money, and then they run into the buzzsaw, a one seed that is Gonzaga, and Gonzaga is smoking them in the first half. But in the second half, Northwestern battles back, gets into a 5 point game, and then the refs miss a blatant goaltend when a Gonzaga player sticks his hand through the rim to block a shot. So just to add insult to injury, Northwestern coach loses his mind and gets teed up. So in a matter of seconds, a game that could have been a 3 point game is now a 7 point game, and Gonzaga has the ball, and Northwestern isn't able to get over the hump again. So it was a really really great run by Northwestern, but the way that it ended really hurt. It was definitely one of the biggest storylines of the weekend.
Yeah, you got to keep your cool there. I know it was a missed call and it was a terrible call, but even if they miss it, it's still only a 5 point game with a few minutes left. You got they like had all the momentum. You just can't get a T there if you're Collins, and he just lost his cool and it pushed it out to a 7 point game then with Gonzaga having the ball. So
Mm-hmm.
that I mean that changed the whole landscape of the game. And if
Yeah.
we were yeah, and if we
So
were gonna oh sorry, go ahead.
so I was watching this game, and I didn't have any sound on it, so all I see is Collins like run onto the court and get teed up, and I'm like, oh my god, you can't do that. Like you can't stop the momentum, like you said. But then I kind of changed the tone a little bit. Like if you're in a 5 point game and the ref misses a call like that, like what are you going to do other than freak out like that? I mean, it's kind of a tough hand to be dealt. Obviously, you don't want to get teed up, but I mean, it was almost a justified tee if
Yeah,
that exists.
no, you're right. I mean, we say it from an outsider's perspective, but if we were coaching and our team where we are fighting our way back, I think most coaches are going to lose their mind. But it's just tough to watch when you know that like you can't really do that there.
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
you're right. In the moment, it's kind of tough to hold back. And if we were going for a specific player, man, Matthew Fisher Davis, the shooting guard for Vanderbilt, actually kind of to follow the Northwestern line here. So
That whole
Vanderbilt was
pod.
playing Northwestern. Yeah, that whole pod. So Vanderbilt was playing Northwestern in the first game, round of 64, and they were down a good amount, battled back, and they were up one with, I'm drawing a blank on like the seconds, maybe 10, 12 seconds left. And so they go up one, and Matthew Fisher Davis fouls Bryant McIntosh. Just, intentionally fouls him. He thought that they were down one. Well, he's just a moron. It's funny. They show a video. He actually looks up at the jumbotron and he's like, "Oh wow, I'm stupid." So he had no clue what the score was, and he cost their team a game. McIntosh hit both free throws. Northwestern effectively went up one then, and Vanderbilt missed the go-ahead shot at the end. Uh, just a tough way to lose a game, especially battle your way back and then to lose it like that.
Yeah, the ultimate self-inflicted wound there. Really, really bizarre for a player to just not be in the game like that and cost it for his team. Uh, yeah, terrible, terrible turn of events, but it worked out well for Northwestern.
Yeah, and would like to just shout out Northwestern. It was cool to see them in the tourney for the first time, and their fans. They were, kind of what I said. I thought that they'd win the first game and then they would get run out the gym, but you know what? They battled back against Gonzaga, so good for them.
Really cool, and they did have a pretty rabid fan base. It was cool. Actually, one of the Gonzaga players after the game when they played Northwestern, because there was a big Northwestern crowd there. Gonzaga was like crowd and all was crazy, but we play at BYU once a year, so no crowd is crazier than that.
Yeah, yeah, and that was, I'm sure that he meant that because BYU is their only loss this year.
Exactly right, and maybe it will be their
Yeah,
loss. Um,
yeah, we'll see.
so we have a weekend in the book. So we have 64 down to 16, and I think we're just going to run through each region here, talk about what was the biggest surprise, what was the best game that we watched, and then we can talk about the three upcoming games in each region to get down to the Final Four. So Aldo, in the East region, tell me what was the best game you watched, your biggest surprise.
So the best game I watched was the Nova Wisconsin game. It was just a great game throughout, in my opinion. I thought Nova actually had it then at the end there. They were up five, I believe, with a few minutes left, and Wisconsin battled back. Bronson Koenig, like he always does, hit a couple big shots, and then Nigel Hayes hit that sweet little fake spin back under the rim
Mm-hmm.
layup to go ahead. So that was the best game in my opinion, and the uh, biggest surprise, I mean, it's got to be South Carolina over Duke. I said on this podcast that, for all the Duke haters, you want to see Marquette because they can score with them. And man, South Carolina scored with them, and Duke just, they couldn't grind with South Carolina. But South Carolina put up 65 points, I believe, in the second half. So uh, surprising, and the fact about how they won too was surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So the best game that I saw, I go back to the first round of SMU USC. So that was one of the few games in the first round that actually came down to the last possession.
Yep.
USC was able to win, and it was an upset. So the 11-6 upset and a really awesome game to the wire, I thought was the best game. And then I agree. I'm looking at for the biggest surprise, and I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I did say that the bigs in this region could really run through, specifically Hap and Motley. So here we have Wisconsin and Baylor, and Florida advancing as the 4th seed is expected. So the kind of default surprise is definitely South Carolina over Marquette, and I don't know if I would have had him over Duke if even I gotten there. So it was really cool to see. It was one of the last games of the night, so everyone was kind of biting their nails. And then you're right. I mean, South Carolina really just took it to Duke, and part of the problem in that game for Duke was that their lack of depth really caught up with them. I think at halftime, a lot of their players had 2 fouls, and then a few ended up fouling out. And so South Carolina just took it to them, basically in a home game. So they are now in the Sweet 16 going up against Baylor, and on the top portion we have Wisconsin, Florida. So how do you see the rest of this bracket shaking out?
Yeah, this one, it's funny. Everyone was looking forward to that Nova Duke matchup at the Garden,
Mm-hmm.
and not only will they not play in the Elite Eight, but neither of them are there at all. So, yeah, it's a tough call. The Wisconsin Florida game is really tough. I'm going to lean with Florida. I actually really like this Florida team. I think if they didn't lose Egbunu, I think that they, you know, maybe could have contended for a national championship. Without him, I think down the road it could be some trouble. But I think that they'll beat Wisconsin in a good one. I think that one's definitely going to be a close game. And then Baylor, South Carolina. You know what? I have Baylor, and I picked Baylor last week in my bracket, but I just like the way South Carolina's playing offense. I mean, we knew all year that they're one of the best defensive teams in the country. Scoring the way that they scored the first two games, I'm gonna roll with them, and I'm actually gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna say that they're gonna get to the Final Four.
Okay, so South Carolina over Florida.
Yes.
No, I mean I think that that's totally possible. So my take here is Florida Wisconsin is really a toss up here. I
Yep.
agree. Florida has suffered a bad injury at the end of the season. Um, I'm slowly starting to believe in this Florida team more and more, particularly with Mike White. Um, but I think that I give the slight edge here to Wisconsin. I think that Wisconsin will advance past Florida, but really a toss up game. And then Baylor, South Carolina, what an interesting matchup because South Carolina, as you stated, plays awesome D. Baylor turns the ball over and turns the ball over a whole lot for a team this good. and they haven't fixed that problem this weekend. They had a couple bad ones against New Mexico State and USC. So for a team that's kind of shaky in terms of their offense taking care of the ball going up against South Carolina, I think that is a pretty good matchup for South Carolina. All that being said, there's kind of a maturation curve for these teams to like advance weekends into the tournament. And although it was awesome for South Carolina, I think they kind of blew their load against Duke, and I think that Baylor's actually going to be able to take them down. So then in a Wisconsin Baylor matchup, boy, I really have. I mean, that's even more of a toss up. I think I'm going to take Baylor into the Final Four over Wisconsin after that.
Yeah, I mean, the one good thing for Baylor is that against USC, Manu Lecomte pretty much saved them and came to life, and he's been kind of missing. I know he had like an injury late in the year,
Mm-hmm.
so if he's playing well, they will be tough to beat because Motley is just a beast inside. And when they were really good early in the year, it was when Manu was playing well with Motley. So that was a good sign that Manu Lecomte showed up at the end of that
Yeah.
USC game.
Did you see Manu Lecomte's little 6-0 run or 7-0 run that he put on by
Yeah,
himself?
no, he pretty much won that game for them.
Yeah, he did. He separated there. But the coolest thing was he hit like an N1. I don't know how we got to 7-1, but he scored his final bucket. USC took a timeout, and like the Baylor bench erupted and like rushed on the court and started, patting him on the back and everything. And he showed no emotion. It was one of the cooler things. It's kind of funny for a guy that turns the ball over so much to be that level-headed during the run there. So really cool, and it's just a cool element that one of these coaches is going to be, has to be in the Final Four. So
Yep.
just cool to kind of see someone different coming out.
Yeah, no, it is. It's always cool to get at least one different team in the Final Four.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that could be the case in the West region as well. So in the West region where Gonzaga, West Virginia, Xavier, and Arizona advanced, I'll ask you the same question. What was the best game you watched, and what was the biggest surprise?
The best game I watched, we already pretty much talked about it, is the Northwestern Vanderbilt game.
Mm-hmm.
Northwestern went up, Vandy came back, and then the ending was just wild. We had a shot at the end to win it. It was missed, and then you had the whole Matthew Fisher Davis. We talked about the foul situation, so that was the best game. And the biggest surprise, I'm gonna have to go with Xavier. And it's funny because I said last week that Florida State, they're the team I'm most scared of because they've got
Mm-hmm.
so many athletes and a bunch of NBA players, and then they're also the team that could lose by 20. Now, I said that a little jokingly. I didn't think that Xavier was going to run them out of the gym by 25. Just wild. I just cannot believe that this Xavier team that ended the regular season losing 6 of 7. I think their only win was the Paul. Now, they kind of put things together in the Big East tournament, have been looking better. But man, to if anybody thought that they were going to beat Florida State handedly by 25, like you're crazy. So that was the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah, that was a surprise. But like you mentioned, I mean, Florida State, of all the teams to win the national championship, was also the one to get smoked by 25, in the second round. So not totally unexpected, but I'll agree with you, definitely surprising. So the best game I watched, I think was the first or second game of the whole tournament was Princeton Notre Dame in that region. Um, that we were really high on and thought that would handle Princeton pretty easily, but Princeton hung around, only lost by 2. And the thing that made this game so great, aside from me watching at my desk at my computer, trying not to make any noises, was that Princeton had 2 excellent looks from 3 to win this game.
Yep, they could have won it.
With less than like 15 seconds left. So just from a sheer like buzzer beater upset fashion, I think that was the most interesting one. But you're right, there were a lot of good first round games here. The biggest surprise for me, I'll stay with Notre Dame, is that the fact that West Virginia was able to beat and handle Notre Dame in the way that it did. I thought that Notre Dame was a really good matchup for West Virginia because they have so many savvy ball handlers. But West Virginia jumped out to an early lead and never looked back. So it was really just Bonzie Colson versus West Virginia, and that was pretty shocking. So we have an interesting matchup here against Gonzaga, West Virginia, and then Xavier, Arizona. So how do you see the rest of this?
Yeah, so Gonzaga, West Virginia is actually I know everybody loves to look forward a little bit. Everybody loves the UCLA Kentucky matchup, and don't get me wrong, that's awesome. But this is my like under the radar best matchup. It's just the Gonzaga team, like we've said before, they're so flexible. They're one of the best 2, 3 teams in the country, and then this West Virginia team, just their style. I know I trashed it a little bit come tourney play, but because the last couple of years they haven't played well, but they offensively have been playing a lot better. And yeah, like you said, like they didn't handle Notre Dame, but they were up the whole game,
Hmm.
and they didn't give them as much trouble as we thought that Notre Dame would. Yeah, this is a real interesting matchup. I do think Gonzaga will win it, and then I think that who knows with the Xavier team now, but I think Arizona wins that pretty easily, and then we have the Gonzaga Arizona matchup, that rematch that everybody wanted to see, and I'm going to stick with my original pick of the Zags. I just think that they're just so flexible with how many different lineups they can play, and so balanced offensive and defensively, that I think that Mark Few finally gets over the hump and gets to the Final Four.
All right, and so I actually agree with you on the winners of every one of these games. But I will say the Gonzaga West Virginia game scares me a little bit. We were talking that Notre Dame was a bad matchup for Gonzaga just because the only time Gonzaga lost was when they really got reined in from three, and Notre Dame could do that. But West Virginia presents a whole other obstacle in the way that they play, and I was talking to one of my buddies about this Gonzaga team, and yes, like Nigel Williams-Goss is an amazing, amazing point guard, and hopefully their run continues so more of the country can realize that. But when you look at their other guards, the folks that you want to have the ball, that list is pretty short. Jordan Matthews isn't an exceptional ball
Right. He's
handler.
not like a ball handler. It's really just, yeah, it's Nigel Williams, Goss, and Perkins probably.
Right, right. So you're looking at a two-man show to try to break this press, and this press gets a lot of, uh, pardon the pun, this press gets a lot of press, and trying to figure out what's the best formula to beat it. Well, we just saw that a team was full of ball handlers and Notre Dame couldn't do it. We saw a team with freshman guards and Temple take them down. So I don't really know what the formula is to beat this West Virginia team, but it's definitely going to be an uphill battle for Gonzaga with the ball handlers. I do think that the element of the game where Gonzaga has an advantage is West Virginia just eats boards, especially offensive boards, and I don't see Gonzaga getting out rebounded with their size. So I think Gonzaga may turn the ball over a bunch, but I think they'll be able to limit the second chance points from West Virginia, and I'll take Gonzaga over West Virginia in the Xavier Zona game. What a wild game! I think, but Miller coaches Xavier
Yep.
before Zona,
Yep.
so
He came from Xavier.
yeah, so kind of a cool storyline there. But I think the Magic runs out for Xavier. They really just got two favorable matchups, I believe, and I think Arizona takes them down. And then I'm going to stick with my original projection and take Gonzaga over Arizona to go to sweep the season series.
Yeah, just real quick on that Gonzaga, back to Gonzaga, West Virginia. And I agree with everything you said about the press and how Gonzaga really doesn't have too many guards to handle that. But Gonzaga also is, I want to say, number one or top three in the country in KenPom in defensive efficiency, and West Virginia can't set up the press if you don't score. So that's, and like you said, that West Virginia also gets a lot of offensive rebounds, and Gonzaga just, is also a good rebounding team. So that's going to be their key. Can they contain West Virginia on the offensive end? Because the last 2 games they've been on fire, and can they rebound and stop all the second chance points? And if you do that, then you know they can beat West Virginia in the half court clearly.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's move into the South region, which I now have to stop myself from coughing in this region because we have 1, 4, 2, 2, 3. So
That's not
UNC,
necessarily a bad thing in this region, though.
it isn't it. You're lining up all the blue buds here. So we'll get to the projections, but tell me your biggest surprise and the best game you watched in the South region.
So my biggest surprise would have to be Arkansas. Uh,
Mm.
just Arkansas in general. I trashed Arkansas, and they did barely get by Seton Hall. There was that terrible intentional foul called at the end of the game where you know that the Seton Hall player was just trying to foul him, and he did push him in the back a little bit, but he tripped, and it made it look way worse than it was, and the refs just kind of ended the game essentially by giving them all. But then the way that Arkansas played against Carolina, it's really a shame that they lost because they were up five with like maybe a minute left or so, and the last three possessions were possibly the worst offensive possessions I've ever seen any team run. So I guess you always regress back to the mean, but man, they played so good all game against North Carolina, and then to just kind of throw it away at the end there with just three, they like ran. They were trying to eat clock, and I hate when teams do that. When you don't play slow, don't play slow the last 2 minutes of the game. It ruins your flow as a team. And then not only did they play slow, but they ended up getting like three contested 3-pointers as their looks. They ran like a high ball screen. Carolina switched, and then they just like didn't even take it to the hole. They just settled and had three bad shots. And Carolina, they're a great team. They came back and they won. So it's a shame, but yeah, Arkansas would be my biggest surprise. And then the best game would be the Wichita Kentucky game. Just a great game. I was hoping I picked Dayton, but I was hoping for that Wichita Kentucky rematch from a couple years ago, and it didn't disappoint. Just back and forth all game, and kind of the same thing. Real disappointing last possession for Wichita. Now Greg Marshall ran out of timeouts, so he wasn't able to call it, and they pretty much did the same thing, just a high ball screen, and Kentucky switched and they blocked the three, and I think they blocked the three in the possession before that. But it was either way, it was a great game, back and forth all day.
Yeah, it was, and you actually stole both of my selections there in Arkansas and Wichita State. So I'll deviate a little bit. I think the biggest surprise, maybe for both of us, was Kansas State over Wake Forest in the play-in games.
Yep,
Like,
yep, that's a good call.
we were unbelievably confident in Wake Forest to beat Kansas State and then beat Cincinnati, and you're sitting there watching the only game of the night slot, and Kansas State is just taking it to Wake
Yep,
Forest.
they handled them.
Yeah, it was pretty nuts. I mean, and Wake Forest is a really really good offensive team. They still had a decent offensive day, but what Kansas State was able to do, kind of at least in our opinion, the under the radar underdog taking down Wake Forest, and then rolled over by Cincinnati. So I think the biggest surprise was Wake. I'll have to agree. The best game was Wichita State, Kentucky. You kind of hit on the in game stuff, but just for me, it was a one possession game down at the wire. And these are two programs that are kind of flip flopping, in my opinion. When Wichita State was getting big a few years ago, it's tough not to get behind that team. So I was a big Wichita State fan, and my fandom in Wichita State has slowly started to decrease. Just kind of the repetitive nature that we constantly talk about them and no other mid majors. And then on the flip side, Kentucky, I was never a big fan of John Calipari, but he's really won me over. So two teams that are trending kind of in my opinion rankings in opposite ways. Just watching that game flow through, and by Kentucky winning locks up the blockbuster next round. So looking forward, we have UNC Butler in the 1-4, and then UCLA Kentucky. How do you see those shaking out?
Yeah, I mean, if there was any, like I said before, there's any region to have chalk, it would be this one because the matchups are just awesome. I know that I believe you said you had Butler beating UNC, but I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be closer than people think, but I think UNC is just too talented. I think they come out, especially with their close game with Arkansas. I think maybe they'll wake up a little bit. And then the UCLA Kentucky game, man, I have UCLA winning, and I'm going to stick with it. But this game is about as pick 'em as it gets for me. I wouldn't be shocked at all if it comes down to the last possession. But I'm gonna go with UCLA. I just gonna lean that their offense will carry them. And then looking forward to UCLA UNC. I had this before, so I'm gonna stick with my original pick of UNC. I just think that um, I think they'll be a little bit too much inside for UCLA to handle, and I'm gonna stick with that. So I have UNC going to the Final Four out of the South.
Too much inside for UCLA. You mean the team with two pros down low?
I mean, Leaf hasn't done it for me recently. And oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the
Ike.
other big kid.
Yeah,
Yes, I will go with Ike. I forget his
Ike.
last name. Or I'm just gonna botch it anyway. Yeah, I mean they're good, don't get me wrong, but Carolina just runs in waves, and I'm just gonna roll with Carolina. Wouldn't I mean? Don't get me wrong, UCLA is awesome, and I think can match them from a talent perspective, but I'm just gonna go with the depth inside and just the way,
Got
I'm
it.
gonna
So
stick with
Carolina
my
sends
guys.
Alford to Indiana, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So yeah, these I picked both of these matchups accurately, so I can't deviate from my picks. Like you said, I have Butler over UNC. Maybe UNC wakes up because of the Arkansas game. Maybe there's a flaw that Holtman and the guys can expose. So I do like. I'll still take Butler over North Carolina. I'm not going to say with a lot of confidence, but I do think that Butler's a team that is kind of surgical in the way that they operate and might be able to expose UNC, particularly UNC's in-game coaching, with like 30 seconds left in the game where they were losing. Roy Williams still hadn't called the second half timeout. He was sitting on 3 timeouts the entire second half. So maybe, I don't know if you want to read in between the lines there, but I think Butler could be the team that knocks off Carolina. In the other game, UCLA Kentucky, just another awesome game. The more I watch UCLA, the more I love them. And although I think Kentucky's talented and is definitely a different team than than when the first time these two teams match up, I still like UCLA. So I have UCLA Butler, and then I think UCLA is too much with Butler for Butler and advances to the Final Four.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if honestly, and even Butler, I really wouldn't be surprised if any of these teams got there. They're all real talented. Um, and it's just going to be a real fun 3 games to watch.
Yeah, it definitely will be. And we'll have to find out their opponent coming from the Midwest region. So Kansas and Purdue, the 1 and the 4 matched up, and Oregon and Michigan, the 3 and the 7 are matched up. But why don't you tell me about the best game you watched and the biggest surprise?
I'll leave the best game. I'll pick a different one because I think we probably were going to go with the same game there. So I will leave that to you.
Okay.
Um, but I will go with best game. I'll go Iowa State Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a great game. Purdue came out and looked awesome, and then Iowa State with Monty Morris just fought back, and then Purdue came out on top. But just the way that Iowa State fought back from down, I think they were down 19 or 17 in the second half. So that was just it was an awesome game. And then biggest surprise, it's got to be that Miami Michigan State game, and not even that Michigan State won. I wasn't high on Michigan State, but the fact that they just handled them by 20, like wild. I would have never thought that. So that's my biggest surprise.
Yeah, so I actually agree with you in the biggest surprise. I was looking for, where it would come from, and it's definitely got to be that game where Michigan State just took it to Miami and blew them out by 20. So that was really surprising. I appreciate you leaving the Rhode Island Oregon game for me, but I think we need to do a little segment on that together. Game that I watched aside from that one was actually Iowa State Nevada. I know it turned out to be an 11-point game, but this was a crazy game. It was for the first half. It was up and down. Both these teams were running like it looked like a pickup game where you had like 6 guys on one half of the court and 4 guys on the other half. Like they were just running up and down, but weren't scoring at all. And then in the second half, Nevada really made a push where Cam Oliver was just like jamming on people. It was a really exciting game. I was pulling for Nevada, but Iowa State came out on top. A really exciting game. But maybe play second fiddle to that Rhode Island Oregon game, which I know both of us were watching closely.
Yeah, no, Iowa State always gives you usually an entertaining game, and like we said, Nevada would be an interesting matchup for them, and then even the Purdue game was a lot more entertaining, honestly, than I thought it was going to be. But Iowa State, like I said, always will make it a good matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we go to this Rhode Island Oregon game, which we were watching intently. Um, Tie game with under a minute left, and URI commits a silly turnover. Dorsey on Oregon goes down and hits a three, and Rhode Island has to heave one up at the end for the tie. So the Rams come up 3 points short and just a possession short. Was a really awesome game. Kind of a bummer the way that it played out with Hassan Martin picking up two fouls immediately and basically never got in the rhythm of the game. Um, even on the court the last 3 minutes just because of how out of it he was. So Rhode Island was playing the whole game without their starting center, and for a really long stretch in that second half, it looked like they were going to win. I mean, they were on fire. Stanford Robinson had the game of his career, and Terrell was just knocking everything down. So it was sad to see them go. But another team that I know both of us really like in Oregon advances.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me that Hassan Martin would have essentially been
A
like,
non-factor.
yeah, a non-factor, and that's not even an overstatement. Like the dude barely played in the first half, got his third foul real early, like you said, and then when he did get in the second half, just was so out of it from not playing and not wanting to pick up his fourth foul that, yeah, he was pretty much useless in the game. And you would tell me that they would be winning the whole game and pretty much 95% of the game looked like they're gonna win. I would have been shocked, but I don't regret taking them to the Final Four at all. I thought they played awesome, and it just Oregon's a good team. Just kind of got a little unlucky there.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of it stinks when you pick a team and they just don't show up and they get blown out. But the fact that they battled with Oregon and pretty much were ahead the whole game was not makes me feel like at least we were on to something.
Right. We were definitely onto something. So two things about the game, about this Oregon Rhode Island game that happened afterwards. So, throughout the tournament, a lot of seniors shed tears when their teams lose, and it's an emotional part of their life, and you're kind of witnessing it. Um, and cried at the end of that game too, and that one really hurt me because this was a senior who was like a starter, a big deal on this team, and he literally was handcuffed. He contributed absolutely nothing to the game, so that's how his career ended. Not in a fight against a really good team, but literally on the bench, just watching his team crumble. So that really hurt. And then on the Oregon side, they had a camera in the Oregon locker room after the game, where a lot of teams, come into Champaign and cheering and jumping, and their coach doing goofy dance moves. They cut into the Oregon locker room, and it was Dana Altman still in his tie, literally telling his team, like, we got so lucky. If you guys expect to play like that and beat Michigan, you're crazy. We need to pull it together. So kind of a different approach from the Oregon room going to this next game against Michigan, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, it's good because certain teams are happy to win, and others you got to realize that, like, hey guys, we like, yeah, it's great that we move on, but you can't play like that and
Right.
be a team that's as hot as Michigan. And I guess to tail on that, so Oregon plays Michigan in the Sweet 16 and Kansas plays Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
Just to look forward, I think Oregon will win. I think it's a good matchup for them. And I just think I think that the Michigan Magic, if you will, will run out. I think Oregon moves on, and then I had Iowa State beating Kansas, and I'm gonna stick with that, and I'm gonna go with Purdue. I've actually liked, and I've been down on Purdue all year, but I've liked the way they've been playing, and I'm gonna go with Biggie Swanigan and company, and I think that they'll beat Purdue, and then I'm going to go with our Oregon squad to the Final Four. So hopefully they can make a run. But I think even if they do play Kansas, I think that they'll have a good shot as well.
Yeah, so I swear we don't talk about these before the pod, but I completely agree with you here. I think Oregon over Michigan. I think that game is like Oregon +1 right now. Michigan can really score, but so can Oregon. I think you're kind of
Yeah,
right.
they're definitely Oregon's, I think, underrated nationally for their offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of teams that, like I mentioned, like Oregon was a 1 seed, went to the Elite Eight last year, so they've kind of been here and they have championship aspirations. I think Michigan might still be riding that plane crash high. and it might come crashing down on them. So I think so. I like.
What an awful pun.
There was like,
Jeez.
dude, there were puns inside of puns there, crashing down, plane high. I mean, come on, that was pretty good.
It was good. All right.
So I like Oregon, and then you really stole it out from under me. Trust me, I watched Matt Painter coach a team that I love last year. He got out coached so many times, so I'm hesitant to say that he'll be able to beat Bill Self's squad. But if there's any team that's going to cause Kansas trouble, it's a team with bigs like this. So I think Purdue actually is a really really bad matchup. One thing that Kansas has going for them is I think they're playing in Kansas City. So essentially, do you think Purdue's going to win a tournament road game? I would typically say no, but it is March, so I'm actually going to take Purdue over Kansas as well, and then take Oregon over Purdue. I think if Oregon's able to get past Michigan and kind of right the ship after a shaky start, their guys will lock in. I know they don't have many seniors on this team, but Dorsey and Brooks considered leaving for the NBA last year, so this might be their last run of it. So I think they'll be locked in.
Yep. No, I agree. And then just to run through real quick, so I had South Carolina with the upset to come out of the East. Was sticking with my pick with Gonzaga out of the West, sticking with my pick for UNC out of the South, and then went with Oregon out of the Midwest. And I guess just real quick, I'm going to stick with my Gonzaga versus UNC, and UNC is the champ. So I don't know if you want to run through yours real quick
Sure.
before
So
we.
I have So I have Baylor advancing, I have Gonzaga advancing, I have Butler advancing, I have Oregon advancing, and then I'll stick. Oh, sorry. Uh, yeah. No. I'm sorry. I have Baylor, Gonzaga, UCLA, and Oregon, and then I'll stick with my original championship game of Gonzaga over UCLA.
All right. Yeah. Well, hopefully, there was a lot of great games this last weekend. No buzzer beaters. So hopefully we can keep the great games, get maybe some better late game, management, and get a few buzzer beaters here. But I'll take just even the good games that we had this past weekend.
Right. We were spoiled last year.
Yeah. Last year was with all the buzzer beaters, it was crazy. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of good games, and the one good thing about it, not a lot of upsets, is we have a lot of great games for the Sweet 16, and we'll have them for the Elite Eight. And so we'll hopefully cut another pod at some point before the Final Four next week. But before then, do you have a Let It Fly this week, John?
I do. I am armed with the Let It Fly this week. So,
You start us off for once.
all right. So this weekend was my mother's birthday. So happy birthday, mom. And in doing so, I was actually out in the suburbs with my family celebrating. So aside from watching games on my phone and on the TV, one thing that we always do is we always, put to vote what movie we're going to watch, and then we try to find it on all these different sites. So we agreed that we were going to watch A Few Good Men, which is a wonderful, wonderful movie. I'd never seen it before, but it was awesome. So we're on our smart TV looking to try to find this movie. So it's on demand, it's on Hulu, and it's on Amazon Prime. But you have to buy all of these movies. Like it's free, and Comcast, on demand, you can like rent movies and stuff. But I don't understand buying like a digital movie on an account on Amazon. Like I don't know. I want to get your thoughts on this. Am I behind the times? Am I like, do people buy movies without buying physical movies?
Uh, Yeah, I think it's the new renting. My family never did it. I'm also team jailbroken Fire Stick, so I don't have to do it. But I think it's just the new renting movies instead of going out. Unless you go to like a Red Box, I think that's really all you have. You rent it on the TV. It's just like kind of on demand, except not free. And even on demand, I think there's some that you have to pay for. But yeah, it's the new way to rent movies, I guess.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. So we ended up spending like 13.99 to buy a movie from 1992. Like I don't know. It was
13.99. Okay, you need to
well, no, I
you
mean,
need to.
so you could rent it for 48 hours for like 3.99, or you could
Okay.
buy it. And certain movies you could only buy. So we could only buy A Few Good Men. So we cut a fat check to, I guess we own A Few Good Men now. So if anyone like knows our Amazon or Comcast password, you can watch that. But like, I guess that's how it works. I don't know. It was pretty bizarre. But all things considered, it was a good movie.
All right, yeah. Well, maybe I'll hook your family up with a Fire Stick that'll have a few programs on there that'll help you guys out a different way next time.
We would happily accept that.
Yeah. All right. So my Let It Fly. I know that we talk a bunch about TV shows and like How I Met Your Mother and whatnot on here. So I've had a little more time on some Mondays and Tuesdays now. So I've been watching some TV. I just started getting into Married with Children. It's an older one with Ed O'Neill, Coach O'Shea. But man, it
Oh
is
my God.
it's a it's a great show, and I'm gonna keep watching it for a little while now. It's a great like background noise show, nothing like serious, but yeah, I it randomly came on a couple mornings before I was ready to leave for work, and I laughed a few times. I was like, all right, I'm gonna give it a try. So I've been watching some episodes. So yeah, if anybody's looking for an older TV show to watch, I'd recommend Married with Children.
That is funny. Geez, so I come in here with The Few Good Men thinking I was going to be the throwback film, and you come in with Married with Children, which aired in like the 80s.
Yeah, I think it
Have you ever
was
seen
80s
that
into the
before?
90s.
Have you ever
I've
seen that show before?
I've seen it like on, but I've never actually sat down and watched it. But it's definitely worth sitting down and watching.
It is a really, really good show. One thing, so the son in that, what's his name? Bud Bundy, right? The
Yeah, yeah.
son, like I heard a radio announcement or like an advertisement where he was coming to some nightclub and he still refers to himself as Bud Bundy. Like it's the only thing this guy's ever done, and he just milks the crap out of it. It's like coming to Whisper nightclub this Saturday, Bud Bundy, and you're like, what? So yeah, you're really behind on this, but it is a good show, and Ed O'Neill's on fire. Christina
Yeah.
Applegate's in that too, right?
Yes, she is. And man, every time I see Ed O'Neill, I just think Coach O'Shea. And Coach O'Shea was always about shooting his shot, especially when he you know, came and just stole Spike from the Little Giants. But you know what? Sometimes you got to shoot your shot. So just remember, everybody, shoot your shot. All right.
Married with Children? Are you kidding me?
Dude, I just started watching it. It's so freaking funny.
No, it is. It's so funny, but like